During her usual morning checkup, a nurse went to the room of a patient who had been in a coma for more than a decade. The woman, although suddenly lying motionless, began to make strange sounds that alarmed her, so she immediately began to check her, and it was then that she noticed that there was something strange about her body. Upon removing the sheet that covered her, the nurse screamed in complete horror and, unable to believe her eyes, ran away, creating a great commotion among the other hospital workers who were petrified by the shock of what was happening. A few hours later, the authorities showed up at that place and began the investigation of one of the most amazing cases in history. Luz Maria, or Sleeping Beauty as she was called by all the workers of the renowned hospital of the capital region, she was a beautiful girl who, 15 years ago, when she was only 6 years old, was hospitalized in the health center after being found unconscious on one of the sidewalks of the city. After almost a month passed without anyone being able to give a reason for the girl's origin, finally, a humble family from a distant village came to look for her. The two elderly men were devastated to see the state of their little girl and were informed of the large sum of money they had to pay if they wanted to keep her alive. With tears in their eyes, the poor old men ended up giving the order to disconnect the little girl, who was their only daughter, as there was no way they could get even a small part of the large sum they were demanding. Doctors and nurses, upon learning of this, were so dismayed, as many had become attached to the sweet little girl, whose angelic face had stolen the heart of everyone who saw her, that they decided to contribute money to cover Luz Maria's expenses until she finally woke up. The years passed, and although she still did not open her eyes, the admired Sleeping Beauty became a very beautiful girl that everyone talked about, because it was surprising and at the same time heartbreaking to see how such a sweet lady was still prostrate in that bed, unable to enjoy the world that admired her with so much fascination. Andrea, one of the oldest nurses in the hospital, was the one who had become most attached to her. She said that she felt like her second mother, and every day she spent long hours talking to her, playing music, and giving her therapy, because she had the firm hope that one day she would be able to wake her up. At that time, Luz Maria's parents, although they went to see her whenever they could, were so old and sick that there was very little they could do for her. One day, while crossing the street to go to the hospital, Andrea was hit by a vehicle that ended up leaving her in bed for 3 long months. When she was discharged, the nurse was handed over to the care of her children, who took her with them to another city. While she made a full recovery, despite feeling very happy for the attentions of her relatives, the nurse could not help but feel a great concern for Luz Maria, who feared that her companions would not care for her as hard as she did, and that she would end up deteriorating even more. A year later, Andrea was finally able to return to work. On her first day, full of excitement, she immediately went to see her beloved Sleeping Beauty. Upon entering her room, although she looked the same as always, she had a very unusual expression on her face, and it was then that she began to emit some strange moans that completely disconcerted the nurse and made her notice that there was a strange lump in the middle of her body. When the sheet fell to the floor, Andrea screamed uncontrollably and ran in a hurry to find the doctors. The strange lump was the huge belly of Luz Maria, who was pregnant and about to give birth. When they heard the news, everyone was perplexed. How was this possible? In an almost miraculous act, after a delicate cesarean section, the fragile baby was delivered. Despite her low weight and delicate state of health, the prognosis showed that the baby's chances of survival were quite high. When the shock passed, Andrea, without hesitation, immediately contacted the authorities, as it was evident that some heartless person had taken advantage of Luz Maria's condition to abuse her. The exhaustive investigations did not take long to begin, and the case quickly came to public light, generating a great commotion in the population. During the process to discover the culprit, the news of the death of Luz Maria's parents reached the hospital, and with it, the directors, frightened by the conflict that was coming to them, gave the order to disconnect her and hand over the baby that Andrea had overseen until then to social protection. The nurse, upon learning of this, strongly objected and, crying in desperation, went to the poor girl's room with the baby in her arms to beg her to wake up. When the medical team came in to disconnect her, in a last attempt to get her to wake up, Andrea placed the little baby on Luz Maria's rigid body. When she felt her warmth and heard her cry, to everyone's amazement, her eyes began to open, and then one of her hands rested on the child. After 15 years disconnected from the world, Luz Maria woke up with the news that now she was not only a woman, but also the mother of a little girl. That was not easy to digest. "I don't have a home, my parents are gone, and I don't even know how to take care of a baby," she explained, still feeling very confused. Andrea, moved by the deep love she had developed for her, reassured her that she would take care of her and her little girl, whom they named Esperanza, and that everything would be fine. After a lot of DNA tests, it was discovered that Esperanza's father was none other than a prestigious doctor who was the one who donated the most money to keep her alive in the hospital. He wanted to get rid of the law by using his power, but thanks to the tireless struggle of the nurse, who never gave up getting justice, and the support of thousands of people who protested indignant at such cruelty, that heartless man was sentenced to prison, and his family decided to pass a large pension to Luz Maria, with which they would ensure that she and her baby would lack absolutely nothing. In addition to paying for the long therapy sessions she needs to recover physically and psychologically from everything she had lived through. Now, Luz Maria and Esperanza, who have inherited her same sweetness and beauty, live happily with Andrea and her children, who have been her greatest support to move forward and have made them part of her family.